Dr. Celine Velith had spent her life among the stars, cataloguing species, tracking interstellar diplomacy, and modeling interspecies bonding. For 42 years, her research had followed predictable rules. Species paired for survival, politics, or shared abilities. Every combination she had studied fit neatly into her equations, every pattern rational, every decision explainable, except for humans. On the outskirts of the Galactic Council chambers, she stared at the holoscreen again, scrolling through the latest survey of cross-species unions. The numbers were impossible. "These numbers cannot be right," she muttered to her assistant, a young Corvox named Thalen, whose bioluminescent patterns pulsed nervously in the dim light of the lab. "They've been verified 17 times, Thalen replied carefully. Dr. Velith's eyes narrowed. Humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years, yet cross-species bondings with humans had increased by 400%. More startling, 73% were initiated by the non-human partner, against every model of survival advantage or social logic. "They are choosing them," Celine whispered, almost to herself, actively, deliberately choosing them despite the lifespan gap, the cultural differences, everything. Thalen shifted, uneasy. "Perhaps it is novelty. Novelty fades." 50 years is hardly novelty, Celine snapped, turning away. The statistics stubbornly floated in front of her, refusing to be rationalized. 89% of these pairings survived 2 decades. The patterns defy everything we know. The lab fell silent. Outside, Earth rotated slowly, its blue oceans glinting against the void. Celine's heart raced. She needed to see it for herself. She needed to understand why alien women chose humans. Her first interview was with Sarah, a Thessian diplomat, who had bonded with a human farmer, Marcus Chen, 12 years earlier. The Thessians were famously private, but Sarah agreed immediately. "I've been waiting for someone to ask," she said, settling into her chair. Her silver skin shimmered faintly under the lab lights, a color Celine could not name. Amusement. Anticipation. Celine activated her recorder. "By every metric, this should not have happened. You are a high-ranking diplomat. Marcus is a farmer. Your lifespan exceeds his by 3 centuries. Your cultures share almost nothing. Your biology barely overlaps. Yet you bonded." Sarah's gaze softened. "Do you know what he did?" Celine leaned forward. "During my first inspection in his region, a territorial beast charged. I was unprotected. He stepped in, fragile, mortal, and threw himself between me and the creature." Her voice caught slightly. "When I asked why he risked his life, he said, 'You look scared.'" Celine blinked. "Not because of your rank, or your value as a diplomat. No, just, you looked scared. That was enough." For centuries, Sarah had known fear, but no one had ever responded to it with such care. "Every day since then, Marcus notices me. Small things. Tea, my favorite foods, my moods. He does not calculate benefit. He simply acts. That is who humans are. They live briefly, and they give themselves fully." Celine made careful notes, her hands trembling. One incident could not explain a galaxy-wide pattern, but one pattern was emerging. Humans acted because they saw others, not because they calculated advantage. Next was Commander Vexler of the Emir Arshan Defense Fleet, a warrior whose species had survived millennia through strategic alliances and strength. Emotional bonds were tactical tools, not personal choices. Yet Vexler had bonded with James, a human trauma counselor. "I resisted," Vexler admitted, claws tapping nervously. "I told myself it was weakness. I am a commander, not someone who shows grief. But James found me alone after a battle. Instead of leaving me, he asked me to tell him about my soldiers, every one of them. He listened. He did not interrupt or advise. He just listened. And when I finished, he held my hand and said, 'They were lucky to have you.'" Vexler laughed, a sharp sound, disbelieving. "Lucky. As if I hadn't led them to death." "He saw me. Not the commander, not the warrior. Just me, vulnerable. And for the first time, I felt brave to cry in front of someone." Celine's mind raced. This was not about utility, advantage, or even affection. It was attention. Being seen. Being valued. Humans gave what other species had long forgotten. The final interview that day was Dr. Ree Mirth, a Korvax scientist. Korvax valued intellect above all. Their pairings were strictly logical. Yet Ree had chosen Sarah, a human. By every measure, she is inadequate, Ree admitted, in math, in reasoning, in logic. But she made me laugh. She made life beautiful in ways that cannot be calculated. She showed me joy in inefficiency, in randomness, in small things. She reminded me that logic alone does not complete life. Celine recorded every word, slowly recognizing the common thread. Humans made others feel seen, understood, and mattered, not as species, not as allies, but as individuals. By the second month, Celine had conducted 47 interviews across 12 species, filling 17 data tablets. She had built and discarded 32 models. And yet, she understood less than when she began. The answer isn't quantifiable, Thalen suggested softly. Celine froze. What do you mean? Every subject, regardless of species, talks about humans seeing them. Not as advantages, not as potential allies, not even as lovers, but as beings. Humans pay attention to individuals in a way no other species does. They remember details, notice moods, care in small ways. It's reckless, but it changes everything. Celine felt a strange warmth in her chest, a sensation she could not name. We don't do that, she murmured. We observe, but we do not see. We calculate, but we do not invest. It is inefficient, temporary. Humans live knowing everything ends, Thalen continued. They lose parents, lovers, children constantly. And instead of hiding from that pain, they love anyway. They give themselves fully, because every moment is precious. That is why alien women choose humans, not for their biology, their culture, or logic, but because humans offer what others have forgotten: attention, care, and reckless love. Celine realized she needed one more interview, not with an alien, but a human who had chosen love. She traveled to the outskirts of New Tokyo, finding Michael Torres, 73, tending an alien garden of carefully preserved flowers. His Therian wife had passed 6 months earlier. See these snow blooms? He asked without looking up. Kira loved them. They only bloom in cold, near-deadly temperatures. I kept them alive for her. Celine asked why. Michael looked at her with eyes filled with decades of joy and sorrow. Because she loved them. And every morning I got to see her face light up. She mattered to me. I mattered to her. That is all I needed. He paused, kneeling back in the dirt. Why do humans love, knowing it will end? Because the alternative is worse. 51 years with Kira, every joke, every mistake, every dream shared. And now, it hurts. It hurts more than anything. But that pain is proof of having truly lived. Michael's words struck Celine with clarity. Humans loved not for calculation, not for advantage, not even for reciprocity. They loved because they could. And in that love, they offered what no logic, strategy, or immortality could replicate. Being seen, being chosen, and mattering. She returned to her laboratory as the sun set over New Tokyo. She did not write a paper. She did not construct a model. She wrote a single paragraph, the essence of everything she had discovered, a report no one would approve, but everyone would feel. Humans are not special because of their biology or their culture. They are special because they live knowing everything is temporary, and they give themselves fully, recklessly, and without calculation. In that love, they offer something no immortal, no logical, no careful being can. Humans see, remember, and make others matter. That is why they choose, and are chosen, by those who have everything else. The following cycle, Dr. Celine Velith returned to her laboratory aboard the Stellar Convergence, her mind buzzing with clarity and unease. Her findings were no longer just data. They were a message that could shake centuries of interstellar tradition. Every species she had studied had long relied on logic, strategy, and careful calculation to survive. Humans ignored all of that. They loved, openly and recklessly, and somehow, that made a difference no algorithm could measure. Yet, her report had already sparked whispers across the Galactic Integration Council. Officials and scholars alike were skeptical. Emotional arguments were considered dangerous. Subjective observations were dismissed as unreliable. Logic and statistics were law, and humans, with their reckless emotions, were anomalies. Velith stared at the glowing council message. Report 042 HFY rejected. Emotional content exceeds allowable variance. Resubmit with quantifiable models. She sighed. For centuries, she had sought proof and data. Now, she realized proof had been staring her in the face, but it could not be captured in equations. She reached for a fresh tablet and began drafting a narrative instead of numbers. The story was simple. Humans did not live for centuries, did not calculate, and yet they changed lives by seeing others. Her next step was practical observation. Velith arranged a series of missions aboard the Starfire, a research vessel orbiting newly integrated colonies. Aliens of many species would live alongside humans for weeks under observation. If her theory held, the effects would be undeniable. The first encounter was aboard a small orbital colony on Viridia Prime, a planet of lush forests and floating waterfalls. Here, she introduced Commander Vexler to a group of human researchers. Normally, the commander's sharp instincts kept her distant. Centuries of leadership had taught her vulnerability was a liability. But within hours, Vexler began to shift. James, her human partner, would have smiled at the change. He moved simply, offering tea, asking how her sleep had been, listening without judgment. Velith watched as Vexler's body, usually taut with command, relaxed. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed slowly, a subtle signature of peace. A warrior used to seeing through every threat was being transformed not by strategy, but by attention. Velith scribbled notes. Not force, not logic. Simple observation. Human interaction causes measurable physiological response. Over the next week, Velith witnessed the phenomenon spread. Aliens who were normally reserved, strategic, or distant began acting differently. They smiled without reason. They lingered near humans not for advantage, but for the warmth of attention. A Miron diplomat, known for calculating every alliance and weighing centuries of consequences, confided to a human named Ilara. I have spent hundreds of cycles evaluating the merits of every partnership. Every metric says I should remain distant, detached, efficient. Yet, the diplomat's eyes glimmered with a rare vulnerability. I feel compelled to sit with you, to listen to your stories. Why? Ilara laughed softly. Because I like your company. Because I want to see you. Isn't that enough? The diplomat paused, then smiled genuinely, a curve of lips centuries of protocol had never allowed. Velith wrote rapidly. Attention. Presence. Validation. These are forces as powerful as logic or military might. Velith also observed the unexpected consequences of human emotional transparency. On Viridia Prime, a quarrel had erupted between two alien factions over trade rights. Normally, such disputes escalated quickly, sometimes leading to violent outcomes. But one human, a young engineer named Caden, intervened. Not with authority, not with negotiation skills honed over decades of diplomacy, but with empathy. He listened to both sides, asked what they truly wanted, and shared a personal story of a small mistake he had made that led to unintended consequences. The aliens froze. Someone of his species, with barely a century of life experience, admitted imperfection openly. It was revolutionary. The tension eased, and the dispute ended with laughter and shared responsibility. Velith observed that humans did not avoid conflict, they humanized it. Back aboard the Stellar Convergence, Velith compiled her observations. She realized something profound. Humans did not just offer attention and care, they rewired alien behavior. Species that had survived through caution and calculation began taking risks for empathy, offering trust without demand, and valuing presence over protocol. It was not only romantic bonding, it was a societal transformation. One by one, alien systems integrated human-inspired methods. Councils began holding open discussions. Warriors shared grief, diplomats acknowledged vulnerability. Across the galaxy, The shortest-lived species was reshaping the longest-lived. Velith realized that humans were not simply loved, they were catalysts of change. The galaxy had built civilizations on cold logic, but humans reminded every species of what it meant to matter to someone else. The culmination of her research came unexpectedly. On the floating city of Elissar, Velith arranged a final experiment. She gathered 50 aliens from 12 species and 10 humans. Over 2 cycles, she observed their interactions. Initially, aliens behaved predictably, cautious, analytical, reserved. Humans moved freely, smiling, listening, laughing, failing, helping. By the final cycle, Velith noted something extraordinary. Aliens were imitating human behaviors, even those they had long considered inefficient. A Miroshan warrior offered comfort to a grieving subordinate. A Korvax scientist paused to appreciate a sunset, describing its beauty aloud to a human companion. A Thessian diplomat spontaneously gifted flowers with no purpose beyond joy. Humans were short-lived, fragile, unarmed, but in their presence, centuries hardened beings softened, opened, and dared to feel. Velith realized that HFY, the humans in this galaxy, were remarkable not because they conquered worlds or mastered technology, but because they dared to love fully. As her final observation, Velith sought the oldest living human she could find. Michael Torres, now tending alien gardens on Viridia Prime, had grown frail but radiant in spirit. He had long outlived many of his peers. Velith approached, notebook in hand. "Why continue after loss?" she asked. Michael looked up at her, eyes bright despite the weight of decades. "Because the alternative is worse," he said. "If I let fear of loss stop me, I would have never loved Kira. I would have never helped anyone. I would have never mattered. Pain is the price of connection, and I would pay it again 1,000 times." Celine felt a strange emotion rising in her chest, the echo of centuries of alien calculation. Humans did not seek immortality, they embraced mortality, and in doing so, changed the universe. Velith presented her final report to the Galactic Integration Council. Her findings were not numbers, charts, or models. They were stories. Stories of courage, love, attention, and reckless empathy. She named the report, "Humans, the shortest lives, the deepest impact." The council initially rejected it. Emotional, unquantifiable, subjective. Yet every species, from the Korvax to the Thesians, had begun to act differently. The stories spread through colonies, stations, and gardens. Aliens who had long avoided risk dared to care. Leaders who had followed logic for centuries softened. The galaxy was learning, slowly, the human way of seeing one another. Velith realized the truth she had been searching for all her life. Humans did not need to be the strongest or the smartest. They only needed to exist fully, openly, and attentively. That simple act, a fleeting life that paid attention to another being, had become the most radical force in the galaxy. Months later, Velith walked the gardens Michael Torres had nurtured. Alien flowers from dozens of worlds bloomed under the care of humans and aliens alike. She watched a young Thessian girl, taught by a human gardener, pause to admire the petals and whisper thanks. Across the galaxy, countless similar moments were happening. The very shortest-lived species had reminded everyone else what it meant to truly live. Celine smiled, a rare, unguarded gesture. The stars outside shimmered as though responding to her realization. She had come seeking data, explanation, proof, and found something deeper: hope, attention, connection, the courage to care, even when it could hurt. Humans did not conquer through power, influence, or longevity. They conquered hearts. And in the process, they taught the galaxy what it meant to truly matter. As the sun set over Elissar's floating towers, Velith closed her journal. Her work would never be approved formally, but that no longer mattered. Across 1,000 worlds, beings who had spent centuries calculating every move now paused, listened, and saw one another. And that, she knew, was the greatest victory a species could achieve. Because in the end, it was not about being human. It was about being brave enough to love, see, and care in a universe that did not guarantee tomorrow. And in that simple, reckless courage, humans had changed everything.
jetzt ein bisschen südlicher noch, ne?
Was ist eigentlich der rote Knopf?
Eigentlich nur. Tut doch mal.
Licht einfach nur. Call.
Okay, jetzt drüben.
Was denn?
Ah, ich lerne hier gerade das Walkie-Talkie kennen. Also damit kannst du quasi anklingeln.
Boah, Alter, du musst mal kurz das Auto zumachen. Ich muss hier ein bisschen die Klimaanlage. Es ist ja so gottlos warm. Ich schwitze mir gerade ab, ey. Ist das hier nicht warm? Oh, okay. Oh.